Hi, welcome to the bathtub. This is the old masturbator, and there's Dodo. She starts talking when I do these now. She's totally quiet, and as soon as I start this, she starts chirping. We're doing one of our theme shows, and the theme show is, if I got to remember the whole title, is it's one of those, if you like so and so, you might like such and such. And this one is, if you like George R. Martin Games of Thrones books, not the TV show, which are fun, but the books, or you like Michael Moorcock, who we're going to have to put Michael Moorcock by the way in our All-Bathtub Hall of Fame pretty soon, because that's kind of hard not to keep him out of the Bathtub Hall of Fame. If you like these types of fantasy novels, which are kind of dark, as you know, dark and kind of twisted, and they're not, heroes versus villains type stuff, and there's lots of kind of evil worlds there's lots of evil people and half evil people fighting really evil people. And if you like these types of adventures in fantasy fiction, you might like a book I never thought I would read, which is Poul Anderson's The Broken Sword. It's a George Ball illustration. It's quite a beautiful book. These are the old Ballantine adult fantasy series. We've talked about them with their wraparound covers. These are like the most beautiful paperbacks in the world, I think. There's very few books that are this beautiful. I would put these up with those old Raymond Chandler Ballantines. Ballantine did these wonderful books. This is from the series that Lynn Carter edited. Lynn Carter edited this series in the 60s and 70s when I was a kid. And I think I first bought them just because they were beautiful. And I liked Tolkien, so they were published by the same people who did the Tolkien books. And Lynn Carter started doing these fantasy. He went up back and did fantasy classics. We've talked about several of his books in the bathtub. For example, Arthur Machen's Three Impostors, one of my favorite books, was published. To my knowledge, I first learned about it from the Ballantine books. And this is the Poul Anderson one. Here's a couple classics. Again, really influential, important books. Early fantasy novels. This is George MacDonald's Lilith. Again, there's that wraparound cover. I mean, these are just beautiful. A book I never quite finished, but you can tell this guy's really bright. Fletcher Pratt, The Blue Star. Anyway, there's a lot of these books. So anyway, I bought them all over the decades. We're having the same martini from our last episode. Because I don't do this thing for weeks, and then I do 2 or 3 at once. Dodo, shut up. And I never would have read this book, really, because I'm not a huge Poul Anderson fan. When I was growing up, he was a very, very popular science fiction writer. He was not only popular, he was extremely prolific. He had books and stories out all the time. He must have had 2 or 3 or 4 novels a year. He was always in the best of the year. When I was a teenager reading science fiction, he was always in the best of the year science fiction books. Science fiction collections, and he was in almost every issue of every magazine that seemed was coming out. Here's some early ones. These are before my time. War of the Wingmen. He did some of the old early Ace books. World Without Stars. Poul Anderson. This is one of the only other books I've read of Poul Anderson. It's called The High Crusade. I talked a bit about this and reviewed part of it when it came out in the Library of America. Did a great 60s science fiction novels. And I read this, and it was just a complete trip and kind of nutty, and I wasn't totally wild about it. I liked it, but it was complete. It was crazy. It was about a bunch of crusaders from the whatever century that was, who fight an alien ship and take it over and go off fighting for freedom in the stars. First of all, it treats the people who fought the Crusades as if they were heroes, and it's a weird book, but it's kind of fun. And I think this is his first novel, Brainwave, which I think I may have read when I was a kid. Anyway, he's clearly a very smart man. He was a smart writer. I met him once. He was a super tall guy. I mean, he must have been 6.5 feet tall, if not taller. And a very striking Danish-American guy. And he was quite healthy. And I met him. He had a sailboat, I think. I was at this friend of mine who knew all these writers. And he came in, and he was a very nice man, very, very nice man. I liked him. But he was a big strapping guy, as they would say. Anyway, all these books I sort of like. I've never quite been a big Poul Anderson fan. But because it was in the adult fantasy series, and I felt like reading something a little different from the detective novels I just finished, I opened this up. Lynn Carter always wrote kind of interesting introductions. None of the books in this series were bad. I don't think I've read a bad book. And I read a lot of books I really liked, particularly when I was a kid. Anyway, I was totally taken with this book. It's not at all like any of the other Poul Anderson novels. So if you read or liked him or don't like him, it has nothing to do with it. This is one of his earliest novels. It's a real traditional fantasy. And it was written and published about the same time as the Lord of the Rings. I don't think he would have read the Lord of the Rings when he wrote this book. But it's based on lots of things that I know nothing about, Icelandic sagas and Danish old mythology and sagas, and all these stories about all these sorry, I keep losing my screensaver keeps kicking in. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do anything in this stupid show. It's based on all his old mythology. So the central premise of it is that there's some kid is born to some king or some queen, and the elves, the prince of the elves or the king of the elves, thinks this kid is so wonderful that he steals the baby away and replaces it with what's called I forget. Basically it's a changeling. He creates a baby from a troll. I think he whips the troll until she has a baby. I guess these are based on old mythologies. I don't know. And he produces this kind of evil creature and puts it in the bed where he steals this good baby. And it's about the history of the trolls and the human beings and the elves and all these sort of battles. Now, I won't describe it more than that because I just finished it. I think I've already forgotten most of it. It's just such a weird, hallucinatory, fantastic, absorbing book. I have to say I enjoyed the whole book. It's written in kind of a, it sort of emulates the prose of these old sagas, and he does a pretty good job. I found a lot of his prose in none of his books. I found it a little florid, but here it works perfectly. And what reminds me so much about, and I would suspect it had an influence on this book. I suspect it had influence, and maybe even on Moorcock's fantasy novels, because it's about a world which is kind of awful, and it's its own universe, it's its own planet, its own history, and it's set in England, but it's between the elves and the trolls and all these other creatures running around. It's about all the kind of political intrigues, and then basically the series of battles that occur between these two. They're not brothers, but one's a changeling based on the other one, and they're both the leaders of their armies. It's a very dark book. It's again, and as far as the good boy, the good prince, he ends up going back to his own family. He doesn't recognize them, and he ends up falling in love with his sister and having a relationship with her. And it has a kind of tortured romance in it. It's almost like it's very Wagnerian. It's very Wagnerian. It's very Tristan and Isolde, this kind of just totally doomed tragic romance that works. I think it all works all the way through, and I enjoyed it. So anyway, if you like, who did I mention just now? George R. Martin, who I think is actually, I like George R. Martin. He's a pretty good writer. I like him. I think this is the sort of book you might like to read, just to sort of see a book that might have had some influence on the type of writing that George R. R. Martin does so well. Okay? Anyway, there it is. The Broken Sword, Poul Anderson. I'm sure there's lots of cheaper editions, but if you can get this beautiful old Ballantine book, you can have that in your library. It's just such a cool book. Okay. Happy bathing. Stay safe. Don't forget, the International Bathing Alliance, we want you. We don't really need you, but we want you because we just have this huge alliance of people who take baths all over the universe, and they can read books for free in their bathtubs at their home just by being a member of the International Bathing Alliance. And if you're reading books in bathtubs and you haven't joined the International Bathing Alliance, there's nothing we can do about it. We won't even try to come after you. But why not join all your fellow bathers? All you need to do is send me a message, say, tub me up, Master Bather, and I put your name on a map, and I send you a link to the map. And then if you want, I send you a free PDF of a diploma that makes you look very, very significant. You look very significant with this diploma on your wall, and you can put it in the bathroom. You can put it in the coat closet. Anything you want to do with it. Okay, happy bathing. We're gearing up. The Pismo Beach Prop Department is working on our Christmas shows. They're going to be a huge, fantabulous extravaganza. Happy bathing. Bye. Oh, look, I got the floral shirt. So I didn't mention this last time. I'm wearing the floral shirt. Okay, bye.